I'm going to go ahead and get started on our presentation for today. Today I'm going to cover the bullying, harassment, discrimination, retaliation student training assembly. Our policy, House Bill number 1583, allows that school districts, they had to adopt an anti-bullying policy by September 1st of 2007. And this was signed by Governor Jay Nixon for a new version. And it really took into account student safety, especially looking at cyberbullying and youth suicide. We had modified requirements for school anti-bullying policies that went into place. And there were added definitions for the cyberbullying policies. Our policy here at our school is the bullying policy 2655. And it says that our district is committed to maintaining a learning and working environment free of any form of bullying or intimidation. So what people need to realize is that bullying is strictly prohibited, not just here at school, but on any of our school grounds, during the school time, or any school-sponsored event or school-related context that may be taking place. What you see in maroon is the definition of bullying. So bullying is the intentional action of an individual or group of individuals to inflict intimidation, unwanted aggressive behavior, or harassment that is repetitive or is substantially likely to be repeated and cause a reasonable student to fear his or her physical safety or property. It can also substantially interfere with the educational performance, opportunities, or benefits of any student without exception, or it substantially disrupts the orderly operation of our school. And that's what we see a lot of times here at our school, is something may not even occur here at school, but it comes into our school building and disrupts the school day to where people can't focus on learning. And that's when we have to take action. So keep in mind, it doesn't always have to occur here at school. And cyberbullying is one of those big examples of that, through Snapchat or Instagram or different platforms that you guys use. Going more into depth with the policy 2655, it defines cyberbullying as the transmission of communication, including but not limited to a message, a text, a sound, or image by means of an electronic device. So this includes like your cell phones or different devices that you guys may communicate with. We do prohibit and we discipline for cyberbullying that originates on our district grounds, or like I said earlier, that comes into the school day and disrupts the school day. Bullying, as defined in the policy, is strictly prohibited. And like I kind of hit on yesterday, we encourage our students to report any incident of bullying which they've witnessed or incurred by contacting myself, the building principal. If I'm not available, you can let Mrs. Fimler, Mrs. Durbovin know. District employees are required to report any instance of bullying of which they have witnessed within 2 school days of seeing the bullying occur. They too need to report to me or someone who would receive reports. So if I'm not available, Mrs. Durbovin, Mrs. Fimler are good people to go to. Once I receive a report of an incident of bullying, I have to start an investigation within 2 school days of that report. And I may ask other people to help with the investigation. And the investigation then, my side needs to be done by within 10 days of getting that written bullying report, unless there's some factor that it has to be extended for some reason. Students who are found to have violated this policy will be subject to consequences. And this, lots of factors come into play. I mean, it depends on how old the student is, how severe The harm is, how severe the behavior is, how often is it happening. All different kind of factors come into play to determine what the consequence will be. Here are some possible consequences if a student is in violation of this policy. You may lose privileges of something. You may have a detention. We may have to conference with the teacher. Your parents will be contacted. You sit down and conference with myself. In-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. You may be, kicked out of school, and the law enforcement could possibly be contacted. So keep in mind, it again depends on what is involved, and each investigation is different, but those are all possible consequences. And like I covered on our handbook assembly, our policy 2655 is in our handbook, but you can also find it on our school website. We also have a regulation, 1300, and it's the prohibition against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. So harassment or discrimination because of an individual's race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, sex, disability, age, genetic information, or any other characteristic that's protected by law is prohibited in this district. And our district also prohibits retaliation against a person who files a complaint of discrimination or harassment. So keep that in mind. Retaliation, I'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes, but that is also a huge problem, and there can be consequences for disciplinary action there too. This regulation governs and outlines the procedure for filing a complaint of harassment or discrimination based on a protected classification by students, employees, parents, and patrons of the district. And yesterday, I kind of told you, I'm the compliance officer, so you can file and come to me for those complaints. And here again is the information, just so you know, it's me, Stacy Cotman, the principal, and I am the compliance officer, and I'm responsible to identify, prevent, and then remedy any unlawful discrimination and harassment in the district. This policy 1300 is also located in our handbooks and on the and on the school website. Sexual harassment is one form of harassment that we sometimes have to deal with. So this depends on the circumstance. Examples of conduct which may constitute sexual harassment as defined in this regulation include, but they are not limited to. So what I'm going to talk about right now are some examples that could be sexual harassment. Any sexual advances, request for sexual favors, threatening an individual for not agreeing to submit to sexual advancements, sexually motivated touching of an individual's intimate parts, coercing, forcing, or attempting to coerce or force the touching of an individual's intimate parts, display of drawings, graffiti, cartoons, pictures, symbols, other written material of sexual nature, sexual gestures or sexual or dirty jokes, sexual provocative or explicit speech, communications about or rating an individual as to his or her body, sexual activity or performance, and verbal abuse of a sexual nature. So as you can see, there are lots of different things that fall under sexual harassment. So my advice to everyone is really think before you say, before you do, or before you write or post anything. Other forms of harassment that can be considered harassment based on an individual's race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, age, or genetic information, or any other characteristic that is protected by law include, but are not limited to. So again, there could be displays of drawings, graffiti, cartoons, pictures, symbols, or other written material, slurs, derogatory stereotypes or remarks, rumors, name-calling, insults, teasing or taunting, threats or intimidating conduct, hostile action, physical aggression or violence, and damage or theft of property. Okay, we have an obligation to report. So the district is steadfastly committed to providing an inclusive environment that is free of discrimination and harassment for all its students and staff. So if there is something that's brought to the concern like informally, if it's not, if it's not resolved, then a formal complaint needs to be filed. And that again is detailed under our regulation 1300. And reports of discrimination, harassment, and or related retaliation must contain as much specific information as possible to allow for proper assessment of the nature, extent, and urgency of the preliminary investigative procedures. So what that means is if you are filing a complaint, the more details and information that you can provide, the easier the investigation is. It's easier for us to understand what is actually going on and get the big picture of everything. Okay, so retaliation we prohibit retaliation. So that's when someone would act out on something. Let's say something's reported against them, and then they, act out in another form to get back at that person. And so that is a problem, and there's consequences for retaliation. There's also consequences for if you falsely report something or you provide misleading allegations. So if you provide a report and you elaborate or you provide false information, you can also be in trouble for doing things like that. So the important thing to remember is it's very important to report. It's very important to be thorough, but you have to be honest, truthful, and upfront when you are reporting. And then retaliation is we protect against retaliation too. So make sure that you do not retaliate against someone. Okay, on this slide, you'll see a picture of the bullying incident report form. And like I said yesterday in our handbook assembly, that these are located in the student handbook. You can find them in each office in the school. It's located on the school website. And then it's also right outside many of the offices' doors in a clear plastic sleeve. So if something is brought to me, this is kind of going to describe what the investigation process looks like. So first of all, a report can be filed by a student, a parent, a faculty, or staff member. So first of all, there's a report filed. And then an administrator would conduct an investigation by speaking with a student who has reported to have been bullied, harassed, discriminated, or retaliated against, and the alleged perpetrator. And then any other bystanders or witnesses. So many times I need more information, so I have to involve other people that have seen the actions happening or were involved in some way. At the conclusion of the investigation, there may be consequences based on Regulation 2610, which is the misconduct and disciplinary consequences. That too is in our student handbook. I talked to you guys about that yesterday. But many times things fall under misconduct there, and there would be consequences determined by this regulation. All parents and guardians are then notified once the investigation's done and things have been figured out. And then what I always do is I follow up with the student who's involved at 1 week and then again at 2 weeks, just to make sure that, hey, has this situation been resolved, or is there additional mediation that needs to take place? So Regulation 2610 is where most of our bullying incidents fall under. And again, this is in the student handbook, but I'm going to talk to you about which areas that typically fall under a bullying incident. Threatening, intimidating behavior or language in bullying, sexual harassment, extortion, which is threatening or intimidating any student for the purpose of or with intent of obtaining money or anything of value from that student, use of language that is disparaging or demeaning, and use of disruptive speech or conduct, or bus misconduct. So typically, those are the subcategories that I would go to under Regulation 2610 to then determine the consequences. So a major change went into effect in January of 2017, and it stated that all school districts in our state are now required to report incidents to law enforcement. So the reason is because the definition under the current law is blurry. It says something markedly greater than the level of uneasiness, nervousness, unhappiness, or the like, which are commonly experienced in day-to-day living. So because that law is not really clear and cut, we have been advised to forward all of our incidents that we receive in our office to the local law enforcement and to the juvenile officer. And it is their responsibility to help determine if there's further action that is necessary. So if I receive a bullying report, I do the investigation, and then I also send that information on to the juvenile office and to our local law enforcement. Okay, now the next few slides, I'm going to kind of talk about the difference between rude and mean and bullying, because this can sometimes be confusing. So rude, it's like when someone says or does something unintentionally hurtful, and they do it one time. So maybe you walk in the class and they're like, man, what's up with your hair? And you take offense to that and you're hurt, but they didn't really mean to be, they didn't mean to be hurtful. They were rude. Okay, it happened one time. It was rude. When someone says or does something on purpose, like so intentionally hurtful, and they do it once, that's mean. So maybe they know it's going to hurt your feelings, but they still say it. It's mean, but again, it hasn't crossed the line to bullying. Bullying is when someone does or says something intentionally hurtful, and then they keep doing it, even though you have told them to stop and you've shown them that you're upset. Then that's bullying. So if someone says something about your hair and they're like, dude, what's up with your hair? And then you say, hey, I like my hair, leave me alone. And then the next day they say something about your hair. And then at lunch they say something about your hair. And then they keep talking about your hair, even though you've told them to stop. Then we're looking at what is bullying. This slide here also kind of talks about some different scenarios to help clarify. So joking around, and this is very common. Everyone is having fun, no one's getting hurt, and everyone is participating equally. So everyone's joking around, laughing, and having a good time. Then sometimes our situations look like it's a one-time thing. So someone is being mean on purpose, and there's a reaction to a strong emotion or feeling, and it happens once, but it doesn't repeat itself. So it's a one-time thing. Sometimes you just need to talk it out. We've moved on. So that's not bullying either when it's a one-time thing. Then we have conflict. And this occurs when two people with the same amount of power have a fight, or there's an argument, or they disagree on something. But a solution can usually be found. So that's considered a conflict when, you guys disagree on something, but usually it can be worked out and this can be resolved. But it becomes bullying when something's repeated. It's unwanted aggressive behavior towards someone, and someone's being hurt on purpose. They know that it's bothering you, and they know that it's an issue, and it's bullying then if they keep doing that, and you've told them to stop. The bullying can be in many different forms, like I said earlier. It can be social, it can be verbal, so it can be said, it can be physical, or it can be through cyber. And that again is often doesn't occur here at school with cyber, but it comes into the school day and disrupts the educational process, and then the school is required to act on that. So that concludes my presentation, and I don't know if anyone has any questions. If you don't want to ask right now, feel free to stop by my office and we can clarify any questions that you may have. Any questions? Okay, well, thank you guys, and I think that's all of the presentations I have planned for at least a little bit. So thanks for giving me your class time.